Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really radical idea. What if the way we communicate, with words in a line is actually broken? We're going to look at a fascinating paper by Ido Margolin and a team of AI collaborators that proposes nothing less than a fundamental upgrade to how we think. Okay, let's start with a feeling I bet we all know way too well: cognitive exhaustion. You know what I'm talking about? That specific kind of burnout you get from just trying to keep up. The endless news feeds, the social media chaos, these huge global challenges, it just feels like you're drinking from a fire hose, right? But here's the twist. The paper argues the problem isn't just the amount of information. Nope. The real issue, it says, is the tool we're using to process it all: language itself. Just think about it. Our whole way of thinking, one word after another, one sentence at a time, it just can't keep up with the sheer complexity we're facing today. It's become a major bottleneck. You see, our brains evolved for small group stuff. Anthropologists call it Dunbar's number. We can comfortably handle, about 150 stable relationships? But digital networks, they've completely shattered that limit. The paper calls it a Dunbar explosion. And on top of that, we get hit with symbol overload, this constant flood of headlines and pings that grab our attention, but don't really help us understand anything deeply. So, how do we get past this language bottleneck? Well, that's what we're going to break down. We've got 5 key parts: the language bottleneck, a new way to see, from words to folds, putting patterns to work, and finally, the future of thinking. We'll start by really digging into the problem, then check out a new framework for seeing the world, and then we'll get to the really mind-bending solution. All right, first up, the language bottleneck. Let's get really clear on why our most basic tool for thinking, language, is starting to crack under the pressure of modern complexity. I mean, just think about trying to wrap your head around huge, messy issues like climate change or AI ethics by just reading articles. The sheer volume, all the interconnected pieces, it's way too much for a straight line of text to handle. We just get stuck in the shallow, reactive mode, which leads to decision paralysis and that feeling of being completely swamped. So how do we get out of this mess? Well, the paper proposes a pretty powerful new toolkit. And it's not about just, writing better. It's a whole new framework for understanding how any system, and I mean any system, from a single cell all the way up to an entire society, processes information and makes sense of its world. Okay, it's called the SKBH framework. And let's break this down with a super simple analogy: your email's spam filter. The signal, or S, that's every single email that comes in. The kernel, or K, is the set of rules the filter uses to judge that email. The boundary, B, is that final decision, inbox or spam. And hysteresis, H, that's just the fancy word for how the filter learns over time. Every time you mark something as spam, you're slowly tweaking its kernel for the future. And what's wild is, this basic pattern applies to pretty much everything. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. When these SKBH loops become stable, recurring patterns, the paper gives them a special name: a gate. And if you think about it, this makes a ton of sense. We have a gate for how we process money, right? Or a gate for how we decide what to pay attention to. These are the fundamental operating patterns that are running our lives and our whole society. And this whole idea of compressing complexity, it's not just a human thing. The paper frames this as a fundamental pattern of the universe itself. It's like a fractal ladder of these gates evolving over billions of years. From the first prebiotic gels to the social brain, each step up the ladder is a new way to handle overwhelming information and create a higher level of order. And language? It's just the most recent rung we've climbed. Okay, so if language is the top rung on that ladder for now, what's the next one? How do we build a new gate that's actually designed for the crazy, hyper-complex world we live in right now? The big idea, the proposed leap, is to move our thinking from a line of words to a space of patterns. This new medium is called a refinement space. And it's not just a better Word doc, okay? It's a completely new environment for thinking that runs on a totally different logic than the text you're used to. And this here illustrates the core shift perfectly. Think about how we argue now. It's all about deleting old arguments to make room for new ones. This proposal says, no, let's think more like origami. You don't throw away the old ideas, you fold them in, keeping their history and complexity. You stop making these sharp binary cuts between right and wrong, and instead you create flexible creases. The goal isn't to find the one right answer anymore. It's about finding better, more elegant folds that can hold more of the messy truth all at once. Okay, I know what you're thinking. This whole thinking in folds thing sounds, pretty abstract, right? So let's bring it down to earth. How does this theory actually become a practical tool that you can use? How do we actually do this? The proposed way to do it is called Gate Next, and it's not just another app. It's more like a whole new communication protocol. You can think of it as a successor to something as basic as email or the web page. And the main way you'd interact with it is through a shared, interactive pattern board. So on this pattern board, you're not writing long paragraphs anymore. Instead, you create these things called pattern cards. Each card is its own little self-contained, structured unit of thought. It's got a summary, its sources, all that good stuff. But here's the magic trick. Each card can be folded down to just a headline or unfolded to reveal all the juicy details. This lets you zoom in and out of complexity, seeing the big picture and the tiny details at the same time. So what would this actually look like in practice? Let's take a massively tangled issue like climate change. Right now, trying to get a handle on it just feels like wading through a chaotic mess of information, doesn't it? But imagine, instead of reading thousands of pages of reports and articles, you could map the entire debate onto one of these pattern boards and suddenly make all the hidden structures visible. So for example, you could have a pattern card for economic growth, and then visually link it to another card for planetary boundaries with a simple, clear label: conflicts with. Boom. You could see exactly how a card for, say, new energy tech refines the problem of fossil fuel dependence. All of a sudden, the entire hidden structure of the argument, all the trade-offs, the dependencies, the real core conflicts, it all becomes crystal clear. You can see it all at a glance. And that brings us to our final and maybe most important section. What's the end game here? I mean, beyond just having a clever new tool, why does inventing a whole new way to represent our thoughts even matter? The ultimate goal is to build what the paper calls pattern literacy. And this is huge. It's not just about new software. It's about developing a whole new foundational skill for humanity, something just as important as reading, writing, and math. It's about creating a shared language we can all use to think through complexity together, both with each other and with our new AI partners. Just think about that for a second. A completely new layer of literacy. A way to see and to work with the patterns that connect ideas sitting right there alongside words, numbers, and images. Can you imagine what a powerful tool that would be for untangling the biggest problems we all face? And that leaves us with one last, really provocative thought to chew on. We know for a fact that the invention of writing literally rewired the human brain and completely restructured society. So the question is, if we actually develop a rich, intuitive language for patterns, what will that do to the future of thinking itself?